Hello and welcome to Pathfinders, a podcast series from RBC Capital Markets, where we uncover the trends and catalysts shaping the fast-moving world of biopharma and healthcare. I'm your host, Joe Coletti. In this episode, we're at RBC's Global Healthcare Conference here in New York, and we're exploring one of the most closely watched frontiers in neuroscience, psychedelic medicine. Joining us is Kabir Nath, Chief Executive Officer of Pathways, a biotechnology company developing innovative mental health therapies, including COMP360, its lead psilocybin-based treatment for treatment-resistant depression. Kabir brings decades of leadership in global pharmaceutical and mental health markets, having previously overseen CNS and digital health portfolios at Otsuka. Kabir, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Joe. It's great to be here.
So you joined Compass with significant experience in global mental health. From your vantage point, can you talk a little bit about the core problem that Compass is trying to solve and how you articulate your company's mission?
Great. No, happy to do that. So I think, as we all know, unfortunately, serious mental illness is a problem that's been with us for a long time and is going to continue to be. We know that rates of depression, PTSD, and so on remain stubbornly high. And while over the years there have been a number of very good medicines developed, unfortunately, most of these work for some people some of the time. What we have seen and are starting to see now increasingly at scale is that some of these psychedelic drugs can have truly transformational properties for people living with serious mental illness for whom nothing else works. Compass was founded to bring the promise of psilocybin, one of the best known of those psychedelics, to patients. And what we're doing now at Compass is generating robust clinical evidence so that ultimately we hope to move this through an FDA approval pathway and to get to as many patients as possible.
There's been growing frustration, some limits, obviously, on how far traditional mental health care can take you. How does Compass fit into, or more importantly, challenge sort of the current system?
So, fully agreed. What we are doing, though, is transformational and can really shift the paradigm of how people think about treatment. Today, if you are treated successfully with an antidepressant, there'll be some relief of symptoms, but people never say, I got my life back, or I lived my normal life. What we have started to see with psychedelics and their profound impacts is that not only can you get some relief of these symptoms, but for some people as well, you actually truly can get your life back. You can put these serious illnesses into remission for extended periods of time. We don't fully understand the mechanisms by which that happens still, as with much else in psychiatry. But what we want to do is to make sure that we can actually bring this to people within the existing systems, which is not to say that they are perfect or don't need transformation themselves, but you have to start somewhere. And we're starting with the millions of people who are already within healthcare systems, already seeing psychiatrists and other therapists who are not being helped by current treatment options.
So I'd like to focus in on COMP360 for a second. COMP360 has received FDA breakthrough therapy designation and advanced into phase 3. How has that influenced your own strategic planning or shifted it? And what does this trial represent to you for the future of psychedelic therapy?
So we are studying COMP360 in what's called treatment-resistant depression, which is a horrible phrase, but really it means chronic refractory depression. So there is no actual DSM definition of TRD, but ask any psychiatrist and they will recognize this patient. This is a patient who has probably been suffering from depression for a decade or longer, who has had multiple episodes, for whom if something ever did work initially, it no longer does. So SSRIs, SNRIs, augmentation therapy, none of that is working. And they're desperate, and that's the patient we're talking about. So the studies we are doing with a single or two administrations of COMP360, in contrast to drugs that you have to take every day for weeks or months or forever, the studies we are doing suggest the possibility to transform that mental framework and that rigid thinking and that fixed depression for some of these patients. And I think that's potentially transformational, not just for those patients, but for the field as a whole. This will be the first phase 3 trial of a classic psychedelic to read out, and that's why there's a lot of excitement within the sector and within the community about it.
So just staying maybe on COMP360 for a little bit longer, as you explore using it for treatment of conditions like PTSD. How are you thinking about your pipeline expansion around this? And how do you balance the scientific opportunity with sort of your strategic focus?
Yeah, so COMP360 is our lead asset. We went into treatment-resistant depression because it's such a significant unmet need. Clearly, there's lots of comorbidity with PTSD, with substance abuse, with a range of other psychiatric conditions. PTSD is something for which there are only two very old drugs approved, nothing actively marketed today, and is clearly a huge and sadly growing issue. There's this view that it's largely a military or veteran issue. In fact, in the civilian population, it's much bigger, and the numbers of people who are suffering from PTSD and not yet getting treatment are huge. So, but it's treated by the same people, psychiatrists in the same places as TRD or some of these others. So scientific and strategic focus are well aligned around where else can we push COMP360 in serious mental illness that actually is treated in the same places, that actually helps to address some of the same patient populations. In time, if we're successful, we'd love to expand our pipeline beyond that into other psychedelic assets and so on. But we see, sadly, such huge unmet need across psychiatry that I think we'll stay focused there for now.
Now, Compass has invested heavily in therapist training and treatment delivery, which I think is an important thing to talk about as well. How does that infrastructure shape your competitive edge? And what have you learned in the process from building out this infrastructure?
Yes, we have done a lot of work in that, but what we've also seen in the last few years, thanks to a product called Spravato or esketamine from J&J, is there's been a very significant growth in what we could call interventional psychiatry. So psychiatry moving beyond just the oral pills to interventions in an office. Esketamine is delivered at very regular frequency, but has had dramatic impacts again on depression, both in terms of rapid response and some durability for many patients. So we've been able to learn from that. It's important to understand that while in our trials we have been using therapists to support patients, in practice they're not delivering therapy. Psilocybin generates an intense subjective experience at these high doses that we've been using, but it's very inner directed. The patient is in their own space working through a lot of their own thoughts and imagery. There is somebody in the room, but in practice it's not directed therapy. So actually the training we've done has been to train therapists not to intervene, but actually to be passive, to be safeguarding patients in the room. That said, many of these patients will benefit from therapy outside the immediate psilocybin experience, and it's important to be able to put that into the context. But the work we've done is really to provide a very neutral framework, a monitoring framework, if you like, for safety for the patient during the experience.
What's Compass doing to ensure equitable delivery of these therapies, in particular, and especially for underserved populations?
That's a very big challenge. I already mentioned, part of the scope of the issue here. So we've signed a number of these collaborations with different potential treatment centers, of which the newest one was with a company called HealthPort, which is a certified community behavioral health center, which exactly exists to serve those underserved populations. And this is a way for us to learn about what it will take and so on. That said, stepping back up a level, the reason we are going through an FDA approval process is that's the only way that we can get to CMS and discuss with CMS how to get this to Medicare, to Medicaid, to VA, DoD populations. Because again, there are many people already within the system who are accessing their care within the system through government schemes and so on. But we need an FDA approval to go there to get either government insurers or indeed commercial insurers to pay. If we are successful in getting to market, we would also have a patient assistance foundation and so on in the way that conventional pharmaceutical companies would.
I have one more question for you, Kabir. It's a two-parter. Looking ahead, what are the most important milestones for Compass over the next 12, 18, 24 months? But then also more broadly, what role do you hope the company will play in reshaping mental health care a decade or more from now?
For Compass, for COMP360 and treatment-resistant depression, we have 3 phase 3 readouts coming over the next 15 to 18 months. One coming just next month, which is the primary endpoint of our first study, 6-week data, 26-week data from that study, and then 26-week data from our second study coming by the second half of 2026. So 3 very significant data sets. Our phase 2b was already the largest study in psychedelics. Each of these phase 3s sequentially will be the largest ever study conducted, RCT conducted in psychedelics. So major milestones for us and for the sector. But I think more broadly, there are a number of companies pursuing psychedelics in treatment-resistant depression, in major depression, and so on. And I think it's really important that we all also continue to work together to lift all boats. Getting through the political actions, getting through the regulatory, the commercial, and so on, is going to be challenging. We're in the lead, and we're happy to be pioneers and take the lead in this. But I think collectively, we have the ability to transform the landscape of the treatment of serious mental illness for so many people. That's a very powerful, but also very humbling ambition, but we are thrilled at Compass to be working on it.
I think that's an excellent way to wrap up the discussion. Kabir, really appreciate you being here with us. Good luck, and we look forward to having you back here again one day soon.
Thanks very much, Joe. I've enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Pathfinders in Biopharma, brought to you by RBC Capital Markets. Please remember to subscribe to get more great content and be alerted about future episodes. This episode was recorded on May 21st, 2025. If you'd like to learn more or continue the conversation, please visit rbccm.com/biopharma. See you all next time.
Based on information available at the time it was recorded, and is for informational purposes only. It is not an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation, and no recommendations are implied. It is outside the scope of this communication to consider whether it is suitable for you and your financial objectives.